This video is on completing the square. This is going to be part 1 of 2. A little while back, we used algebra tiles to try and factor. What I want to try and do is help you to understand what completing the square means by bringing back a diagram of algebra tiles. So looking here, we have to complete the square of x squared plus 6x plus c, which is this blank spot because we need to know what that is. So what I did is I used the algebra tiles and I put my 1x squared here, 3x's here, and 3x's here. Because now what we need to do is we need to complete the square by filling in singles here. When we fill in the singles here, that number will go where c is. So if I fill in here, I would have one that would go here, one here, and so on until I fill up this whole entire area. Looking at that, I would need 9 singles, so my C would be 9. An easier way of doing this would be to look at what B is. So in this case, B is 6. So since B is 6, I need half of that. So half of B, or B divided by 2, is 3. So I take B divided by 2. Once I get that number, I then square it. So 3 times 3 is 9, and that's what would go there. The last thing is that you need to write it in a specific format to be able to solve these problems later on. That format would look like this. So we take the square root of x, which is x, and then we take this number right here, the 3, the half of b. So half of b is 3. We put it in parentheses, squared. This here, the x plus 3 quantity squared, is the same thing as x squared plus 6x plus 9. If you remember special case trinomials, whether multiplying it or factoring it, that's where this is going to come in handy. So again, x plus 3 quantity squared is the same thing as x plus 6x plus 9. So on this problem here, I just want you guys to be able to find C. So what we're going to do is we're going to take half of B. So B is right here, which is a negative 20. So I'm going to take negative 20, and I'm going to divide that by 2, which is going to give me a negative 10. So automatically, I can put that in my quantity squared. And also, to get C, I need to square it. So negative 10 times negative 10 is a positive 100. So x minus 10 squared, or x squared minus 20x plus 100. On the next one, we're going to take it a little bit further and solve using completing the square. Okay, the problem we're going to do right now is x squared plus 8x minus 9 equals y. If you remember when we factored, what we did is we took out the y and put in a 0. So we're going to do the same thing right now. We're going to go x squared plus 8x minus 9 equals 0. To complete the square, I need to not have a c on the side. So I need to move the 9 over. In order to move the 9 over, we need to add 9 to both sides. This gives us x squared plus 8x plus, I'm going to leave a spot to fill in c, equals 9 plus whatever I add to one side, I must add to the other. That's why I'm putting blanks on both sides. You can do anything as long as you keep the equations balanced. I'm going to go off to the side and I'm going to figure out what half of b is. So since b is 8, half of b, so 8 divided by 2, is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here and go x plus 4 squared equals, and we're going to fill in that side in a minute. If I take 4 squared, I get 16. So I'm going to put 16s on the lines. This expression here turns into the x plus 4 quantity squared. And then 9 plus 16 is going to give me 25. From here we need to do something. X plus 4 is being squared. So to do the undo of squaring, we take the square root. So we're going to take the square root on this side. And what we do to one side, we must do to the other side. When there's not a square root symbol, and you draw it in like we did there, you have to do a plus or minus in the answer. So the square root of x plus 4 quantity squared is just x plus 4. So I get x plus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 25. 25 is a perfect square. The square root would be 5. We're not quite done yet. We got up to x plus 4 equals plus or minus 5. What we now need to do is we need to get x by itself. So to get x by itself, we subtract 4 from both sides. Noticing I'm not lining up the 5 and the 4 because something has to happen. So I have x equals, and I'm going to go negative 4 plus or minus 5. This branches off into two problems. It's going to branch off into a negative 4 plus 5, and it's going to branch off into a negative 4 minus 5. And I'm going to solve both of those. And when I solve both of those, I'm going to get negative 4 plus 5 is a positive 1, and a negative 4 minus 5 is a negative 9. So my two answers to the original problem we just did is x equals negative 9 and positive 1. If you had chosen to factor that problem, the roots you would come up with would have been negative 9 and positive 1. Example number 2 of solving using completing the square. We have x squared minus 20x plus 36 equals y. So the first thing we need to do is change the y to a 0. So we get x squared minus 20x plus 36 equals 0. Then we're going to go ahead and rewrite it, moving the 36 to the other side, which is going to give us a negative 36, and leaving spots for when we add. We go off to the side. We're going to take negative 20 divided by 2, which is a negative 10. So I'm going to have x minus 10 quantity squared equaling a blank. 10 squared is 100, so we're going to add 100 to both sides. We get a negative 36 plus 100. If we add those together, that's a positive 64. So now we need to solve this. So we're going to take the quantity of x minus 10 squared equaling 64. The opposite of squaring is taking the square root. Remember, when you draw on your square root symbol, you have to put a plus or minus outside. So when you take the square root of a squared quantity, it just gives us whatever the quantity is, equaling the square root of 64, which is plus or minus 8. So now we're going to go x equals, we add 10 to both sides. So we get x equals 10 plus or minus 8. We branch off to 10 plus 8 and 10 minus 8. So 10 plus 8 is 18 and 10 minus 8 is 2. So the two values that my x equals is 18 and 2. That would be your final answer. I would like you to take a moment and write out the steps to solving by taking the square root. It is now your turn to try some. The first one, I just want you to find what c is and write it in factored form. And that's x squared minus 12x plus c. The second one, I want you to complete the square and then solve. X squared minus 14x plus 13 equals y.